So please join me in welcoming Wayne Clarke to the stage. Wayne, together with his brother Paul, are a robotic dairy farmer up in Dobie's Bight in the North New South Wales. They've transitioned from a conventional to a robotic dairy back in 2015. He was here a couple of years ago sharing what he will do, and now he's here with us to share what he did and what he's achieving. And I think he's a great example of how hard work, background information, and engaging with industry can achieve in a profitable dairy system. So Wayne, all yours.
Thanks, Nico. It's a funny thing, the sort of response I get from people when I mention that we use robotic milking. It's usually one of four things. Varies between virtual euphoria, people get really excited about the whole idea, and then the other extreme is disdain. People are virtually abhorrent, you know, they really feel threatened by it. And then there's the other group is they'll give me a lecture for an hour or so on what we need to do and what we should do, and isn't always helpful. And then the last one is the dairy farmer grunt. For the non-dairy farmers, the GRU part, that refers to, geez, it's bloody expensive, mate. And the quick NT part at the end looks a bit complicated. And so I guess as a dairy farmer, yeah, I'm fully aware of that, and that's pretty much what we do each day is address those two problems. So I guess thinking back, there's three things about robotic milking that sort of are really, if I could set people straight, get their robotic ducks in a line, these would be the three things that I'd want you to understand. The first one is still a dairy farm. There's still plenty of work. I don't know, people think, you know, I often get asked, what are you going to do all day? Well, cows still calve and they don't do it all by themselves, and fences break. And possibly the thing about robotic milking, even though it frees up time because you're not milking anymore, there's a lot of money to be made by how you use that time and using that effectively. The second thing is a machine. Probably the biggest problem with robotic dairies is the word robot. People just get this idea in their mind, something from where they're growing up as kids, have this dream of what a robot can do. It's just a machine. All it does is milk cows, keeps really good I should say it milks most cows, that's important. I'll come back to that. It keeps a lot of records, and it sprays and diverts, drafts cows, but it's still a machine, and like any machine on the farm, it's got to pay for itself, and that's probably a critical thing. How do you we know it's expensive to buy one, the capital outlays there. How are we going to get our money back? That's the key thing to making it work. And the last point is it's just part of the dairy system. It is a different system. I guess my best analogy for people is that it's like you're a farmer all your life, and then say, well, I won't pick on Victoria or New Zealand, but just it's easy for this example. Say you're a farmer in New Zealand or Victoria, you've been there for 20 years, you know, you've got it all down pat, you know what farming is, and then you move to the North Coast in New South Wales. You know what to farm. So if you try and bring your knowledge and skills and implement it on the North Coast of New South Wales, say you get there in January, you want to start, you plough up, you're ready to plant the end of February, early March, and all your ryegrass dies because it's too hot. And because you know perennial ryegrass is the best, you did that. And then so you get another go, in March it rains and it all drowns because we get wet summers, you know. But it worked before, but it's not going to work now. And so you get, you know, just because you've got this mindset of you know what to do is going to be a problem. And probably one of the biggest things is your support base is gone, or your contacts are away. But now you need new contacts. You've got to build all that. You've got to build a new knowledge base to work in a new environment, and you've got to build new contacts for people to help you. And that's probably the closest analogy I can give you. So how are we going to make that machine pay? Well, with the current box system, it's pretty much, when you think about it, it's just a mathematical thing. You've got 24 hours in a day. You want it functioning as much as you can in that 24 hours. And then and that's when it starts getting a bit trickier, because first you lose time, you've got to wash. So there's 3 washes, there's 2 hours gone. Some farmers creep it back, try and save, only do 2 washes. You know, there's all these things you can do. And then, how long does it take to milk a cow? So if you can do it in 6 minutes a cow, you can get your 10 milkings an hour, but then what happens is at 6.5 minutes, you cut your cows down. And if you can get it 5 minutes 30, 5 minutes and 30 seconds, there's more milkings you can get. So, there's all these little things you can do to get that more cows milked, so you get more milk, so you can get more income and make it all pay. But then there's complicating things like the quicker you milk the cows, the less time they've got to eat their grain. And then I'll go back to milking most cows. Like, there's still an udder requirement that they need they've got to have the right shape udder. So if the back teat might be off slightly, it takes longer to attach, so that's a reduction. They're all things you've got to take into account. And then the last thing is there's cow movement waves. Like, a lot of cows start moving at sunrise for us, and 1:30 for us is the time we feed silage, and we can cause good movements then. So, and then with those main movements, dominant cows come in and they're quicker through the robots. They push each other through. They're relentless. Whereas the slower and often younger cows, they'll hang back to the back, and when they get there, they're still slow. They get in there. They might have waited 6 hours to get in the robot, so they're not going to rush out, are they? And funny enough, the ones behind them, well, they've waited 6 hours. They're in no hurry. They're going to whatever. They're not going to push that one out. And so, I guess I told you all that just really not to scare you, but just to give you an example that it is different. They're all things that you've got to think about. But when you're doing it, it's just stuff you do think about. And because it's the 21st century, we know it's important to do a bit of occupational health and safety stuff. So all you do is a bit of warm-up exercises, and then it's just press the button. So even though it looks complicated, once you're into it, it's just what you do, and that's just they're the sort of things we do all the time. So now you know how robots work. I thought I'd hit you with a few graphs. So Nico's been busy over the last few years collecting data from around Australia on what the different robot farms are doing. We're the blue line, and the average of the rest of Australia is the red line. And I guess I just really wanted to give you an idea of, I knew that wouldn't work. Oh, that's right. So most people aim for that higher production, whereas on our farm, we think to suit our conditions, we just aim for a lower production, around that 20 litres. And hopefully you'll be able to see the summer gap there. And so naturally they're producing more milk, so they're taking longer. And they're trying to get more cows through, whereas we're quite happy at 2 milkings, a bit better than 2 milkings. We think that we can save laneway use. We can less energy used walking, and we can milk more cows. So you can see what we try and do is use the robots more, 18 hours, and we try and get more milkings per robot. Because it doesn't matter how you get your milk, it's the cost of the milk that you get, and at the end of the day, it's going to pay it. And our farm stocking rate, that's just a factor of our farming system. So our farm involves 4 robots. We milk 280 cows year round, and it's based on a Clarke system, which we oversow with ryegrass. I put this picture up there because not that it's overflowing with feed, that's just after planting. It just gives you an idea of the size of the paddocks we use, of about 1.5 hectares. That paddock now we actually split in half, and we find that they graze, we split it long ways. We find that they graze the paddock evenly, even though it's a pain, a bit more of an exercise to put the fence out long ways. If you split it across ways, it just graze the front harder than the back. Can't explain it really. I also put up there, when I look at that cow there, and that cow there, and that cow there, all died. Just at the same time we put the robots in, we managed to identify we had Yanis disease, and so our real intention was to milk over 300 cows and really take advantage of pushing more cows through fast and try and aim for 20 hours a day use. That sort of crimped us a bit, which is annoying for a couple of reasons. Apart from the loss of income, is it just put that little bit of doubt in our mind of how hard we can really push the system, how much money we can extract from it. But that's farming, isn't it? You've got to go with that stuff. So now for some numbers. So I guess most people here are Australian, and part of the Australian birthright is to have what you might term as a bovine excrement meter issued, or a bullshit meter, if that's it. And I guess I've got 2 points to make. Before I throw the numbers up, I'm in debt to Kerry Kempton, who's spent a fair bit of time collecting our figures and going and putting our numbers through Database. I guess the great thing about Database is that it gives you an objective measurement, just a realistic thing, a good way to look at your numbers, but I guess it is mainly to compare yourself. So I guess don't get carried away with the numbers. That's all I'm asking. Okay, our physical parameters. So you'll see what we talked about, stocking rate is pretty high. So what I've done, there's so many numbers in Database. So I tried to pick some out and tried to keep them relevant, and even though we've got 3 years figures, I just concentrated on 1 year, 16, 17. Kerry was good enough to give me the average for the northern dairy farmers. There's 18 farms in that, and that state there's 35 farms. And because we've got those meters going, understand that they're average, so there's a lot better farms in there, but that's just the way it works out, that's just an average, okay? So you see, that's sort of what our high stocking rate, so we sort of aim for that lower production per cow. That 9.4 tonne of homegrown feed, we've pretty much we sort of sat in that, we usually sit in that level, that's sort of what we expect. So we've been able to maintain that. Our percentages is pretty much the same. So naturally, you'd expect our full-time labour equivalents to be higher. It's basically just my brother and myself, whereas we had a full-time employee and a part-time employee before. So you'll see how that flows on. That's one of our big cost savings. but it does come at a cost. Like, we are working fairly long hours. Probably we were dreaming that we could do it with one person could do it, but it's really at least a two-person job. Not so much the robots, but just trying to keep the whole farm going. So that was one thing we underestimated. Just a quick overview of the farm to put that in perspective. I knew I was going to do that. That's the dairy there. And so these cows have walked, there's a kilometre from the dairy to there, and they'll go back there. So when they graze over here, they're going close to 2 kilometres travel. That paddock there is where the cows were. Funny enough, they'll come back from here, but they won't come back from that one paddock there because the gateway is in that corner as opposed to on closer to the dairy. So a 60-metre walk is more of an impediment than a 2 kilometre. And I guess that's probably one of the most important differences of robotic farming. For us, we've got 280 consultants. And they literally have a big say in your farm management and your grazing. Because when they don't walk, nothing works. And so, yeah, you think, yeah, you get help. And then just quickly, we graze this way. Because the laneways go around, we can send cows that way. Once they pick up the system, it's amazing what you can do. At the start, it's just frustrating because if something breaks down, they get frustrated and don't know where to go. But once they've got it worked out, it's, you know, when you see a cow that knows where it's supposed to go, they don't get distracted, and we can change any which way we want to now within reason, but it's just a different world. Quickly into more money stuff. So, from that immortal Australian philosopher, Paul Hogan, where the bloody hell are you? We're obviously getting paid more than everyone else in that year. Because of the Yanis disease, we flogged off a lot of cows. We were a bit lucky that the price was good. So that bumped our total income off. Our total farm expenses, you can see we start dropping down well below everyone else in those areas. Mainly because we're really conscious of getting our costs down and no labour. And the variable costs we just had, our overhead costs, electricity would be higher than most people's because we use more, definitely higher than everyone else's. Our dairy costs are high. We have a contract with De La Val, so I don't get a breakdown of our variable, of our repairs and maintenance. So some of that's a crossover there. So in the end, our costs come pretty much in line, but we end up with an EBIT quite a bit higher, which hopefully most of you are up to date with dairy base, but that's what money is left to pay interest and yourself. And so obviously a lot of our money, we need to be up around there to pay our equipment finance. We put our robots on a 7.5-year hire purchase, and so we're about halfway through. So we need that to service that. Quickly, the solar. We didn't do it right from the start. We always knew it would be a great idea because the figures are 20 to 40% increase in energy. It varies, but I reckon we increased our energy use by at least 20%. Unfortunately, we got a new meter the day we put the new meter reader the day we put the robots in, and he didn't read the meter right for 12 months. And when we got the next meter, the new meter reader, we got $18,000 bill on top of our normal bill. So we were motivated to put solar in. Real quick, 35 kilowatt system, roughly $1,000 a kilowatt. Find a good installer. You know, we got someone to check the system out, a energy assessment guy, and he checked it out and he estimated we could get about 33%, but the best we've ever got is 25, 26. And then we've put other electrical equipment in since then, so I can't really judge after the first 2 quarters. But I think on that we will pay for it in 2.5 years was my last workout. Finally, returns on assets. You can see all that. It's more or less just flowing through what I was saying before. Like it's a different system, so it flushes out different in dairy base, and that depreciation is a big topic of discussion, and then the repayments. I'll finish there and go for questions.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Thank you very much, Wayne. So I think from my point of view, I think Wayne is a good example of how you can engage with industry to go through those things that are new. Wayne has been great supporting me, and we've had long discussions on the phone about these kind of things and the numbers, but I think it challenges some of the things that are perceived behind robotic milking. That is that you have to have high production, you have to have high milking frequency. He's doing lower production per cow, lower milking frequency, and still achieving high profit compared to other farms in the States. So I'll open up the floor for probably 1 or 2 questions, if there is. Yes, in the back.
Thanks for the presentation, Wayne. I just wanted to find out, you mentioned at the start of your presentation that the robot is just a machine and it frees up milking time, obviously, but you need to use that time wisely. I wanted to know what you spend your time on. And then second question, I had a comment from another farmer farming with robots, in that he basically bred his animals late. So contrary to what the other speakers in the previous session were saying, his reasoning was that he wanted a more mature animal because they were easier to teach to go into the robot. What would your comment be on that?
Yep. The first one, identified before we start, we put a fair bit of thought into it before we went in, and probably one of our weaknesses before was not rearing our heifers properly. We still only aim for the bottom of the range of Dairy Australia's recommendations. We do carve at 2 years. We're fairly ruthless on that because we've got limited space, so that, pretty much what Cam was saying before, we can't afford to have too many heifers, otherwise you just get big problems because they backlog. So yeah, that's what we spent the time on. We're strip grazing our heifers and feeding them, and so actually, if I was really tricky, I'd reallocate our figures to Paul, my brother. He'd be the heifer rearer, and I'd be the dairy farmer, and it'd look sensational because we actually spend a fair bit of our day just looking after dry stock. So I guess I sort of answer your second question in the same way. We have no trouble breaking heifers. We're up nearly 300 heifers now that we've trained. I reckon 4 out of that I've thought, this is not going to go well. And within 2 days, fine. We actually culled one for the first time the other day, and I think it was more because we were just getting tired and cranky more than normally we would have been a bit more patient.
Excellent. One more question? Yanni?
Gianni Garcia, Sydney Uni. Wayne, knowing you, and I know you'll be thinking already where to from here, and how to get 8% or 10% return on assets in the future. What is the key things you are looking into or changing for getting there?
I'm glad you asked that. So we run a crossbred herd, and we're really finding we've got about 25 jerseys, and that's really annoying when that happens because they're basically given up. You know, they just won't go through because they know that if they go in the dairy, they'll just stay there, and then the next wave of cows will come through and they'll stay there. They'll just stay at the back, and so we really like crossbreds because how aggressive they are and how much, because we're pretty harsh climate, like so much rain, 44 inches or 1140 mils. So, walking those distances, we really knock the daylights out of. We find bigger, heavier cows. So that's another reason why we pull their weight down and we try and average a 520 kilo cow. I know it's against what everyone else is saying, but it's that's what we do, and we're happy with that. So, but when you look back at those graphs, how everyone else is going 25 litres. So, if we can't get the number of cows to lift to take up that other 2 hours, the other option always was in our back of our mind was, well, 20 litres to 21. It's not a gigantic leap. No nutritional wonder movement, so we've got that in our back pocket that we pushed that. And the other thing is the attachment, those cows that don't go on. So because we're short of cows through the Johne's disease, we're mucking around with cows that don't suit the system, so that there's another hour a day that we're actually putting cups on cows that you don't want to do. And so the other option is, do we lease another dairy and milk those cows there and just have a super robot fitting herd that the cups go straight on, so we're maximising our time, number of cows that go through, so just pure economics.
Thank you very much, Wayne. So we'll wind up there. Please join me thanking you, Wayne.